Well, essentially in Oregon, it was regional originally. So there was the Willamette Valley, there is the Rogue Valley, the Umpqua Valley, the Applegate Valley, and then the Columbia Gorge area. And essentially these are geographically disparate places that have very different climates. The Willamette Valley was one of the larger and was certainly the home for more wineries than any of the other AVAs. The number of wineries and winemakers in the Willamette Valley thought that having it just as a homogeneous place, the Willamette Valley, which is 120 miles tall and 50 miles wide, that there were more nuances to the valley than that. There were different kinds of soils, there were different hillsides located, especially within the northern half of the valley, that people thought actually made wines that were distinctly different. And of course, one of the ideas of terroir is if the wines are different and there is a regional identity, then you can create a name for that terroir. In Burgundy, it centers around villages. So you have Vosne-Romanée, you have Pommard, you have Neuilly-Saint-Georges. These are villages that aren't very far apart geographically, and they're essentially on a long set of southeast-facing slopes where the Eau-Côte de Neuilly drops down into the valley below. And as the hill breaks along this long, long slope, you have these villages. And essentially what the Burgundians figured out was that those villages really created different styles of wine. The Pinot Noir took on characteristics, even though from an airplane, the thing looked like a big long hillside. But when you really got down to the specifics of growing grapes, you found that there was an identity within these different villages. And so they created the appellations. And that's reflected in the appellation control system. In the United States, we have an appellation system, the American viticultural areas. And what these winemakers felt that it would be advantageous for Oregon in the Willamette Valley to differentiate subregions of the valley into their own AVAs. 6 were proposed over a period of 5 or 6 years. They were all approved. They start from the southernmost AVA, which is where we are, the eola-amity hills, which is essentially a 17-mile strip of hills, kind of shaped like a kidney, so it's kind of tucked in the center, sort of 2 bulges of the hills. Up to the north and west of us is the McMinnville appellation, which essentially is the northern boundary of the opening of the Van Duzer corridor into the Willamette Valley. The Van Duzer corridor is important because it is essentially the route where cold air from the ocean enters the valley in the evening. And that cold air then has a really profound effect on retaining acidity in the wines and really making it possible to make Pinot Noirs with the kind of acid backbone that you look to in Burgundy and we look to here in Oregon. That acid is a really important part of the structure and the food compatibility of the wine. Then if you go north from the McMinnville AVA, which is basically entirely west and a little bit north of McMinnville, if you go north, there is a horseshoe shape, like an upside-down horseshoe, called the yamhill-carlton district, which essentially connects the McMinnville on the west side with the Dundee Hills, more centrally located in the valley. And it's essentially a horseshoe around that connects those two, yamhill-carlton district. Then a little bit farther north and east of the yamhill-carlton district is a long mountain range that basically runs from northwest to southeast called the Chehalem Mountains. That's its own AVA, and then the western southern corner of that AVA has been separated, and that's called Ribbon Ridge. And it appears that the soils and the growing conditions are distinctly different in that small part of the Chehalem Mountains, so they separated it out and called it the Ribbon Ridge AVA. So we have 6 sub-appellations in the Willamette Valley, mostly very close to each other, connected in some way. The only place that's really separated is the eola-amity hills, because there's essentially a valley floor to the north, east, and west that separates the Eola Hills from the other 5 that are more kind of uniformly connected up north.